everybody. Gonna wait a second and wait for people to join. How is everybody? How are we all doing? Basically, what's gonna happen is I'm just gonna kind of talk a little bit about some of the columns that I wrote this week, and you will have a chance to kind of comment on those and ask questions, especially if they are relevant questions. Oops. They're relevant questions. That's a lot better. You know, ones that actually have something to do with the story. Like the guy that just said you look yummy like a gummy bear. That would be the example, a good example of a bad question, of a question, not a question, of the kind of thing that's not helpful at all. So I'm just going to get started as people start to join, and you can feel free to ask your questions. The first thing that I wrote this week was about a British Labour Party politician named Harriet Harman. She was making headlines for saying that she wants to ban politicians from talking about how great marriage is. And she was bragging about how at her own wedding she didn't have cake or guests or pictures to fight the patriarchy, because the marriage is where, you know, the woman goes from being under the ownership essentially of her father to being under the ownership essentially of who she marries. A little weird to talk about cake as being part of the patriarchy. Also pretty weird that she's an anti-marriage advocate who is married. So she wants to ban people from talking about how great marriage is she going to ban herself? Because clearly, if her own situation is proof that marriage isn't always this give from the father the power of the husband thing, because it's clearly working for her. This is somebody who's been married for over 20 years. I'm not married. If I do get married, I personally probably also want a smaller wedding. A big wedding sounds very stressful. You have to plan it, and you know, you really don't get to hang out with anybody. It's like you have to invite everyone, and if you don't invite someone, they get mad at you. If you don't pick the right person to be in their wedding, they get mad at you. It's nothing to do with the patriarchy. I just really don't want to plan it. I could think of a better, you know, things to do with my time and better, you know, ways to spend my money. But saying it's the patriarchy, whatever. First of all, if you want to talk about traditional gender roles, there are some women out there that still do like those. There also are still women out there who think it's cute for their husband or fiance, before they become the fiance, before they propose, to ask their dad first. They think that's, some of women want to stay at home, and that works for them. And if you want people to accept your little wacko anti-marriage married person thing, then you should also accept other people being able to talk about it and be able to enjoy what makes them happy, because some people that really does make them happy. So let them have their thing. To say that you want to ban politicians from talking about how great marriage is just because you don't like marriage is absurd. People should be able to talk about whatever they want. You want to keep talking about not liking it? Fine. Alright? Okay, the next one I want to talk about is a student who wrote an op-ed about how it's offensive to wear a choker without knowing the cultural history of chokers. I am wearing a choker. And I guess now that I read this woman's article, I do now know the history of chokers. So I guess I'm not being offensive now, but I was being offensive when I was wearing a choker previously without knowing the cultural history. So the student is, her home countries are Switzerland and Germany. And she says, you need to know, and I'll just read it, I have it right here. The history behind them chokers is really complex and fascinating. Women used to wear them because the severe iodine deficiency in the high altitudes of the Alps would cause them to have goiters. In order to hide these lumps or scars they would receive from having them removed, they adorned their necks with chokers. So now we all know that. But to say that you should have to know the cultural history of a choker before wearing one is absurd. How am I supposed to know that putting a piece of fabric or like a little plastic thing around my neck, I have to Google that, like plastic thing around my neck, type of fabric. Well, does this have any cultural history? Who knows what doesn't have cultural history? I'm not going to Google the cultural history of every item of clothing that I put on, otherwise I would never even have time to get dressed. Chokers are a piece of fabric around your neck. They might have this history. It's great that you're sharing this. knowledge is power. It's so great that now I've learned this, but to shame people for not knowing it is absurd, and for not researching it is absurd. Should I research this necklace? Should I research this nail polish color? I mean, do I have to research these glasses? Maybe these glasses, maybe my glasses have some sort of cultural history that I don't know about. But if I had to, can I eat, a cookie? But should I have to research where this cookie come from? Who made it? Who was the first person to start chocolate chip cookies? Who was the first? I just said chili. I don't know the cultural history of chili. Am I doing something wrong? Should I have not eaten that? I didn't have time. I had to go right from a TV hit to this, and I guess I didn't have time to Google the cultural history of chili before I did this. So I guess I should have done that. Pretty absurd. Nobody wants to do that. Everything is, your cultural history is important. You should share it. You should celebrate it. But come on, you can't expect people to do that. You can't expect. She also had a problem, by the way, with Oktoberfest. People using it as an excuse to drink cheap beer. And you know what? I will take any excuse that I can to drink any kind of beer, because drinking beer, cheap or not, is fun. So please don't try to take that away from me. You don't sound like a fun person. Speaking of people who don't sound like fun people, you might have heard about this one. Illinois State University is right now, it's preparing to launch a microaggressions bystander training. So it's training students to jump in on another conversation if they hear a microaggression take place. This is really absurd for a lot of reasons. As I did discuss in my column, something that's been called a microaggression before has been saying, hey guys, to a room, because that's generalizing all people as masculine, and that happens to be offensive to women. I'm a girl, by the way, and I am not bothered by the phrase. I even use the phrase, and I've got to say, if I was hanging out in a room and someone came up and said, hey guys, and then someone else jumped in and said, hey look, there's a girl here, that's offensive to her, I would be really offended by that, by this other person jumping in and telling me what I can and can't handle, because I can actually totally handle hearing hey guys. Plus, everything is, a microaggression nowadays. Asking a student who happens to be Asian for math helps microaggression, suggesting golf outings is a microaggression. Everything can be a microaggression. We're going to have people jumping in on every single conversation. And if you are someone who has a problem with something like, hey guys, that's your right. That's the great thing about this country is you can have a problem with whatever you want. You can speak out about you have a problem, about whatever you have a problem with. But that's your decision. The great thing about a free society also is that we get to decide what kind of conversations we have. We get to decide what we will and will not accept in those conversations. And if you're someone who's bothered by hey guys, then you can say, hi, excuse me, that bothers me, and handle it that way. But to interject into someone else's, someone just said, Alan said he still doesn't understand a microaggression. So a microaggression is seen as a slight, often unintentional comment that can diminish, a group or be offensive to a group. And the idea is that they build on bit by bit and they hurt people. So, hey guys is an example. Asking somebody, asking an African American, can I touch your hair, is an example, because you wouldn't generally ask a white person that. But then there's also some incredibly ridiculous things that have been called microaggressions, such as asking a student who happens to be Asian for math help, because that's saying, you're saying all Asians are good at math, even though, so what if the best student in the class happens to be an Asian? You literally can't ask that student without being accused of a microaggression. That's a little absurd. Who is that helping academically? That's this is a college campaign. Who is that help academically to limit students from getting math help from whoever they want to get math help from? So it's these subtle little things that are often unintentional. And the thing is a microaggression against one group is microaggression. One person might consider it to be one, and one person might not be offended by it. So why are we having these bystanders jump in and say, oh hey, that's offensive, when we don't even really know what people in the group think? Friends in a conversation have inside jokes. Friends understand with their friends more what the people in the group accept and what people are comfortable with, more than some weird social justice-y creep lurking in the corner waiting to jump in like some kind of hero which is absolutely, I mean, that we're creating a nightmare, and this is a public university, and I kind of feel like there's a better use for taxpayer dollars in creating social nightmares. So I have one more story to talk about. It's a study about how British patients get offended if the doctor suggests a diet. So to the point where now doctors, general practitioners, British general practitioners are not telling overweight patients, hey, you're overweight, go on a diet, hey, you need to do this, because they're so worried about offending patients, and patients are actually sometimes not going to doctors who they think might do that. And I understand that I am speaking of from a place of thin privilege. I do understand that. But I still can understand that being told that you're overweight would be something difficult to deal with. But it's way more difficult to die of heart disease or die of diabetes or any of these diseases, which the jury's out on whether or not there's a link between being overweight and certain diseases. It might not apply to everybody, but there's certainly a link that patients have a right to know about. And it's very selfish of these doctors to do this, because it's putting, political correctness or not, and there is a movement with this. So I've seen articles about how it's oppression. I wrote about one that was in Everyday Feminism, and how it's oppression to link science, link scientific studies to obesity being unhealthy, because it's shoddy science. But the thing is, no, it's not. 9 million studies have linked these things, and that's not oppression, because it's a fact. And the crazy thing about facts is that they actually don't change no matter how you feel about them. So the best thing you can do is get the reality of a situation so that you can take all the best steps to make your experience in that reality, where you have to live no matter what, by the way, the best one that it can be. And these doctors are not doing their jobs. And someone said, if you're overweight, yeah, you might, but these doctors aren't doing their jobs by bringing it up and suggesting ways that they could help the patients. I'm not suggesting that doctors should be making fun of people for being overweight, but saying, hey, they'll have more information. Your BMI or this or that is in the range that could cause this and this problem. I'd recommend that you do this and this and this and this. And they're taking that away from patients. It's horrible that the political correctness is making people think that these are things, that there's this movement of, no, it's oppressive to tell me I'm overweight and it's unhealthy, when really it's oh, it shouldn't act. But it's up to the doctors to get over it and do it anyways and tell it, because their responsibility is to their patients, and they shouldn't be putting their own comfort level over their patients. So that's kind of a rundown of my columns for the week, and if you didn't see any of them, you didn't read them, you were interested in reading them, they're all available at nationalreview.com. Every single week I'm writing for them, usually about every day. So thanks so much for tuning in, and if you have any last questions, but it doesn't really look like it, I'm glad I was able to help explain microaggressions to some of you guys, but thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys next time I do this, hopefully next week. Until then, nationalreview.com. Oh, and watch the Greg Gutfeld show tomorrow, Saturday, 10 p.m. It's going to be great. Thanks. Bye.